Welcome, everybody, to Fourth and Frames, the flagship fantasy football podcast here at fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. And, gentlemen, it has been a minute. It's been a minute since we've been here on Fourth and Frames. We've kind of expanded our podcast network here. For those who are not aware, we have this show. We have our IDP show, Shoot the Gap. We have our daily fantasy show, the Daily Fix, and we have our Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast, Daily Dynasty 365. We've been pushing all these different podcasts, giving you different takes on fantasy football from all the areas that everybody loves to play. But we're back. It's time to get ready. It's time to talk about the different divisions here in fantasy football, talk about players in these divisions that we think you should know a little bit more about, which ones are values at their ADP, which ones are good sleeper options. And we cover every position, whether it's on offense or whether it's on defense. So we're really excited to get things going today talking about the AFC East. Speaking of the AFC East, if you go over to fantasyandframes.com today, you'll see our very first article where it's a collection of all of our writers here. Every single writer here at Fantasy and Frames contributed to our divisional breakdown of the AFC East. Just kudos to everybody here at Fantasy and Frames. Thank you very much for all your hard work. It certainly shows, and we definitely recommend that you go out there, those who are watching and listening to this, head over to fantasyandframes.com today and check out our fantasy football preview of the AFC East. And with that, let's go with seniority here because I'm being fair. And let's welcome Mr. Nate Markham back to the show. Nate, how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, how much? Is that an old man joke, or is that just seniority within Fantasy Frames? Because I might have it on both accounts, unfortunately.
Sure. Whatever you find the least insulting is the one we're going to. Then we got Tyler Heil. Tyler, how you doing, my friend?
I'm great. It has certainly been a while on Fourth and Frames. I forgot how loud that intro is, and these headphones are pretty good, so I might be screaming for the next hour or so.
Yeah, you would think with all the time off that we had that I would actually go back and actually tweak said volume of the intro, but whatever.
Hit it hard.
Exactly. Maybe I'll work on it this weekend. Who knows? Next, we have Bill Mustafa. Bill, you were with us just an hour ago for Dynasty 365. It is like past midnight in the UK. How are you holding up, man?
Yeah, it's 1:05. That double espresso worked a little bit better than I thought it would. So I'm here for this one as well.
That's awesome. Of course, for those who don't know, Bill is a huge Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say when we talk about the Buffalo Bills, showing his Buffalo Bills coffee mug as for those who are not watching on screen. Keith Fleming, ahead of our DFS department, brand new here at Fantasy and Frames. Him and Joe Matz will be on the Daily Fix podcast this fall. Keith, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Happy to pop my cherry in the Fourth and Frames podcast. And, man, excited that football is right around the corner. The months leading up to it is just the worst. I'm ready to go.
So for those who are interested in listening more to the Daily Fix podcast, we put out a series of podcast episodes and articles that you can find over at fantasyandframes.com talking about best ball. Everybody loves best ball. Everybody loves getting into best ball drafts. They're so much fun to play. Our charity tournament that's going on right now, the 4-Head Championship, that's a best ball. I mean, you name it, best ball is the way to go. And Keith and Joe Matz did a great job breaking down strategies for drafting during best ball tournaments. So definitely head over to fantasyandframes.com, read that article, go and subscribe to the Daily Fix podcast. You're definitely going to enjoy it, and you're definitely going to enjoy it when you're winning cash this fall. So definitely tune into them. And last but not least, the newest member here to the Frames family, Charlie Cangelosi. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Had fun over with the Dynasty 365 podcast. Ready to talk about some AFC East right now. So I'm excited.
Very nice. And for those who have been listening to Fourth and Frames for years now, wow, it feels so strange. This is our fifth year anniversary, guys. This past week was our 5 years that Fantasy and Frames has been around. So for those who have been listening, thank you. For those who have been following, thank you very much. I do want to toot our own horn just a little bit. And, I hate doing this, Nate. I hate when the attention is on us. But
I'll do it, Nate, if you need to talk stuff. Toot my own horn.
I'm just proud of Fantasy and Frames as a brand because last week we got the official word that Fantasy and Frames will have a seat at the table at one of the most prestigious fantasy football drafts, the King's Classic, which happens every year at the NFL Hall of Fame, ran by Bob Lung. You have industry experts from Brad Evans to Jeff Radcliffe to Dave Richard from CBS, Mike Clay from ESPN. I mean, you have names galore. Bob Harris from Football Diehards, you name it. These gentlemen are there, and we're going to be drafting with them and many other people. Nate and myself. Nate will be in charge of our auction league. I'll be in charge of the snake draft league. We've humble. This doesn't even begin to describe what we're feeling and the opportunity to compete here with the best of the best in the fantasy football industry, and for them to recognize all the hard work everybody here at Fantasy and Frames has put in is truly special. We really want to thank Bob Long and everybody who decided to bring the Frames crew to the King's Classic, and so we look forward to doing that during Fantasy Football Expo weekend, which, by the way, we're not too far away from the Fantasy Football Expo. For those of you who haven't gotten your tickets, sign up, get your VIP package, do all the events, go to all the parties, then go to the expo. As soon as you walk into the expo, you're going to see our booth right there, booth number 4. It's going to be lovely. We have a table runner. We have some stuff to give away, some information for you to digest, getting you ready for your fantasy football drafts, or just talking about fantasy football by itself. Nate, scale of 1 to 10, how much fun was being at the expo last year?
Oh, it was 12 if you go above. It was, because one of the things that I think a lot of people, and it still carries this, I'm going to say, stigma, is that it's just a bunch of industry guys going to massage each other's egos and just, shoot the shit, drink, and hang out. Now, it's a lot of that. It's probably 70% that, which is fine. But we had more people that came up to the booth that actually stopped to and actually engage and have conversations. And they remember that more than anybody else remembered any of the karaoke bar, any of the game bar, any of the Buffalo Wild Wings sit down, is when we actually talked to people and told them a little bit about what we did, what we do, why we do what we do, and, asked them to talk with us. And I think that was probably the one thing that resonated not just with us, but within the industry or the community as well. I mean, we heard a ton of people that said, yeah, we know the footprint that the Frames crew left, and that's a positive that I'll always take with me. And that is what gained the extra 2 points on the scale of 10 is the positive feedback consistently still to this day.
I mean, we care about people who like playing fantasy football. We want to be, we want to be there for the fantasy football fans. Case in point, with everybody that we met last year, it was you, Nate Markham, who met our very own Tyler Heil at the Fantasy Football Expo. Flash forward a few weeks, Tyler's a part of Fantasy and Frames. So you never know. Tyler, what was your experience being a fantasy football fan, being at the Fantasy Football Expo last year?
Well, it was a lot of fun. Obviously, I didn't have anything structured because I wasn't part of a brand. So I would say the 70% that Nate talked about of drinking and shooting the shit was a much higher percentage for me. Mm-hmm. But, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was great getting to meet you guys. And now maybe I can weasel my way into just sitting next to you guys for the King's Classic and just act like I'm doing something.
Well, I can tell you from years of auction experience, the more hands, the better, because to keep tabs on other people's, what the money they have left, some of the targets and allocated funds, I'll never turn down an extra set of hands, eyes, ears, and even mind. I will say I would definitely, pick your brain as well. I'm not just going to use you for your hands, your writing, your good looks, and your sweet Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah,
he has them, man. He is like a resident capologist here. He has some information. But that's enough about the expo. We'll talk more about that the week of the expo. Plenty to talk about there. But like we said earlier, we're back. After you listen to us, if you like what you hear, subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever. And of course, as always, rate, review, and let us know what we're doing right and things that you want to see us touch on more. And with that, let's get into why we're here. Let's get into why we wrote this massive article that we will be breaking down into chunks over the course of the next couple of days for for you to digest. Let's talk about the AFC East. Let's preview the AFC East. Let's look at the positions. Let's look at some players. Actually, let's do some news and notes first. Training camp has begun. I think all of us are happy that football's back. I don't think we need to go around the horn and go around the horn. Wow, I just infringed on myself. Go around the frames and talk about that. Kyler Murray got extended. Fantastic. J.K. Dobbins on the PUP. Gus Edwards, I think, is also in the PUP. I could be.
He is.
Yep.
He is. Tyler Batty. Tyler, you were on Dynasty 365. Pretty adamant that this is the guy that you want in the Ravens backfield. Is that even more so the case now heading into redraft season for your drafts?
Yes, and I'm laughing because I can see Keith just shaking his head disappointed in me. I'm not a fan of Mike Davis. Justice Hill has been a 0 for as long as he's been there. Tyler Beatty was a good running back at Mizzou. He was very productive. He has very good hands. So, is he going to be a star? No, he's not. But can he fill a role for a few weeks on one of the best rushing teams in the NFL? Yes, he can.
All right. And then let's round things out here on a little bit of a somber note. John Mechie was rookie wide receiver for Houston, diagnosed with leukemia the past couple of days. So we wish him a speedy recovery. And hopefully before you know it, after he's done battling this thing, we can see him back on the football field and see him unleash his true potential at the next level. So sending some good vibes your way. Okay, AFC East, let's get into it. Let's talk about everything from a team-by-team approach. And, of course, when we're talking about values, we're going to represent ADP, and so we're using the aggregate ADP over at fantasypros.com and half PPR scoring, because for those who don't know, we like talking about things in half PPR because there are some of you out there that like playing full PPR, some of you, and there's some of you that still – yeah, I thank you, Bill. Thank you right now. And there are some of people out here that still appreciate the good old non-PPR. Because I don't believe you should get a point for a catch that goes negative yards, but that's not me. So we try to appease both sides of the coin, and we talk about offense from a half PPR standpoint. So that's what we're doing, half PPR ADP over at Fantasy Pros. Let's just get into the quarterback position here. Bill, you wrote about quarterbacks. You broke down these guys. What are your thoughts on Tua?
I like Tua. I think the investment Miami have made, bringing in obviously Tyreek Hill, we all know they brought in Tyreek Hill. It's a quarterback that he's never going to be, in my opinion, a fantasy quarterback one. He's never going to finish inside the top 12. Watch him prove me wrong this year now, but I just think with the weapons that he's got for this season alone, at least you're going to get yourself a QB2. You're going to get yourself a guy that he's got, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going to do the majority of that work for him, I expect, but they're going to do the work and he's going to get the points and get the rewards from that. And I just think that in this division, I think there's too many question marks with Zach Wilson. And I just think the situation that Mac has in New England isn't great. So after, the best quarterback in the league, Josh Allen, it comes down to Tua is the only one that I'm really looking at as an option.
So if you were punting the quarterback position and you were just going straight wide receiver, running back, tight end, for those in IDP leagues, IDP, would he be the guy? Is he the guy that out of all streaming quarterbacks that were like the case last year, is he somebody that you're heavily looking at when you're looking at value?
Yeah, value, guys like him, and we're not talking about the Lions at the moment, but him and a guy like Jared Goff are guys that I'm happy to take as late as the other guys will allow me to, and plug and play them, and hopefully get a mid QB2 in Tua and a low end QB2 in Jared Goff.
So Tyler, thank you for bringing up. I was saying that we were using Fantasy Pros ADP. I was incorrect. We were using Sleeper ADP, half PPR. But let's stick with you, Tyler. Let's talk about the running back position. Raheem Mostert's coming out and saying, I'm going to be ready week 1. Sony Michel's showing up just saying, all I do is win you fantasy points and get you fantasy titles. And I can't catch, but I can certainly run the ball. Then you got Chase Edmonds, who they brought over in free agency. What do you make of this running back situation on the Miami Dolphins, and who is somebody that you are, interested in acquiring at value or just in general? You're muted, by the way. Still muted. There you go.
Thank you. I'm falling apart. I'll go from bottom to top here. Raheem Mostert, I'm not super worried about. So I got him for about 100 carries. So just so we know, I projected all of these teams out. I calculated them all out based off league medians, league means, things like that. So and their history. So Mostert, I got him for about 100 carries. He's going to be efficient with them. He always is. He's fast as all hell. But can he stay on the field? Probably not. Sony Michel is interesting. Can't catch. He can block a little bit, but he might be the shoe-in for goal line running back for this team. So I am certainly a little interested in Michel, but the guy I'm most interested in that was my value pick is Chase Edmonds. I think he is the 1A in this running back committee. I don't think he is a workhorse by any means. He's already proven that he can't be. Just with his availability, that's his only real question. When he's on the field, Edmonds has been effective. He is a very good pass catcher. The one thing I did notice was Sony Michel and Raheem Mostert, their career targets don't equal Chase Edmonds' career receptions. So he is the pass catching back on that team. He should see somewhere close to 60, maybe even 70 targets. I like his pass catching ability. I only have him statted out for like 150 carries. So I don't have him making a big dent in the run game, but when you're talking half PPR, that can make a big difference. So Edmonds is my favorite guy in this backfield, especially when you're talking about his ADP being 92.8 and you're able to get an RB2 in the 8th round. So I'm all about that.
Nice. Let's switch over to wide receivers now. And Charlie, for those who may be new to Charlie's work, head over to fantasyandframes.com, read his Dynasty Targets articles, and read what he wrote about these wide receivers. Excellent work. We got the two big names here in Miami. We got Tyreek Hill. We got Jalen Waddle. I am team pro Jalen Waddle. I'm trying to get him in as many of my drafts as possible. I just feel like the PPR nature or the half PPR nature of his game for fantasy purposes is just fantastic. I think he had like 104 targets or something on the season, something similar to that number. What are your thoughts on Tyreek versus a Jalen Waddle here for fantasy as well as for value this year?
Yeah, I'm on the same side as you. I'm team Waddle, and that's not a knock on Tyreek Hill. Obviously, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. He showed that in Kansas City, but I think it all comes to Tua's play. And if I were to take a Dolphins wide receiver, I would rather have the guy with lower ADP. If he doesn't hit, I'm not losing as much value on that pick, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think, Tua, he's great. I just don't think he's Patrick Mahomes. I know Tyreek Hill can say he's the most accurate quarterback in the league, but he has to prove it to show me. I don't know.
See, I see Nate Markham now in the corner of the screen smirking a little bit because Tyreek Hill was his wide receiver one last year. Yeah. Nate, as somebody who obviously has seen his fair share of Tyreek Hill, being a Chiefs fan, are you expecting a huge drop-off in his production now that he's no longer associated with Patrick Mahomes, or do you think it's all about scheming and finding ways to get the ball in his hand and let him do his thing?
I think they'll still scheme to get the ball in his hands. I think they'd be foolish not to. But I think improvisation is the one key that aided in Tyreek's ability with Mahomes. You're not going to pick that up from day one. And I'll tell you, just from this past weekend, having some conversations with some people, I don't want to go and say this is some kind of hot take, like I have any true inside information other than what I've been told from some people that maybe they're all from Kansas City area, is that there might be another little allegation against Tyreek that they're researching right now. Again, I don't know any of this. I'm just saying what people said. I don't want to be the guy that's like, I got inside information. But this is a family that's lived in Kansas City and been involved within a lot of different organizations that have ties with some people. And Tyreek and Mahomes were pissed at each other. And I think that's why he said it. He said it mostly to get back at Mahomes because he was pissed off because he wasn't getting involved in plays. And Mahomes was trying to scheme certain plays, not away from Tyreek, but he had to. When they were playing like the that cover two and really like the deep cover two where they were taking Tyreek out of the game, he had to get more people involved. But I don't know. I don't have Tyreek in my top. Let's see. I don't want to give bad information, but I'm pretty certain he is my wide receiver 15.
Okay.
So, I mean, that probably tells you a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you go over to our AFC East preview, we also have myself, Joe's, and Charlie's rankings here. And Charlie is the closest to of having Tyreek Hill as his wide receiver 10. So I guess you guys are kind of on the same wavelength. And by the way, after hearing what you just said, I'll remember to put out a massive tweet that says breaking news.
Exactly, breaking news. Nate was drinking with his family. And
we got some situations going on with Tyreek Hill.
Right.
Let's go to the tight end situation here for the Dolphins. For those who were listening last hour at Dynasty 365, I was talking about how the target volume just may not be there with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and the fact that Gesicki is a free agent after this year. I mentioned trying to acquire Hunter Long for those who are trying to build up their Dynasty rosters at the tight end position. But for this year, for redraft for this year, Keith, what are your thoughts on Mike Gesicki?
I mean, his current ADP is probably about right. I mean, obviously, he's had at least, I think it was 85 targets each of the last 3 seasons. Unless the Miami offense is just bonkers this year, I don't think he's going to quite get to that number. However, I mean, there is a case to be made. He's a talented dude. He's basically a wide receiver. He is not a tight end. He hardly ever lines up in a true tight end position. He could be helped a lot by having explosive players like Hill and Waddle on the field at the same time. And it could be a deal where they're attracting so much attention. He could get a lot of those short, over the middle, traditional, tight end route type passes. The biggest issue for me, though, and why I don't, again, it depends on when he's available in your draft. I think he has the best chance out of the 4 tight ends in this division to have a really good or solid year with the least concerns. It's just he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, and he hasn't done that the last couple of years. Waddle had more red zone targets than Gesicki did last year, which, I mean, really is kind of baffling when you think about it. Gesicki's such a big target. Waddle is definitely not. And it's going to be hard to believe they're not going to want to get Tyreek Hill the ball in the red zone, because if you need 2-3 yards, I mean, he's been the best guy in football at the wide receiver position for the last few years, because he's so fast. He can get open so quickly. So I just, the whole division as a whole is a lot of question marks at tight ends. And I've been telling people I would probably stay away from all of them unless you get, basically good capital where you're picking them, where they're below their ADP.
Well, you and Bill are going to have a nice little conversation after we go on air. I'll tell you that much, being a Dawson Knox fan. Before we get to that violence, let's get to some praise here with the New York Jets now talking about Mr. Time Person of the Year, according to CJ Uzama, who wore a T-shirt with Zach Wilson on his front of himself heading into training camp yesterday. Yes, we're talking about Zach Wilson, the guy who will sleep with your best friend. What? That's the rumor. That's what everybody's saying, right? I mean, come on.
Hey, it's a man after my own heart.
Look, he was the number 2 overall pick last year. Bill, tell us a little bit about Zach Wilson and what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that, but yeah, look, Zach Wilson, I think when you're looking at the quarterbacks in this division, I think it's easier to put the 2 sophomore or soon to be sophomore quarterbacks sort of closer together, being Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. I just think that Zach Wilson has that upside, that slight jump on Matt Jones, although, Matt obviously had the better rookie year. If you look at what the Jets have done, they were screaming for some offensive additions and bringing in Garrett Wilson to pair him with Elijah Moore and Corey Davis gives them some options at pass catcher. They brought Breece Hall in. They've got a legit running back, a guy that can catch passes and run the ball really well. They improved the offensive line. They've done everything that they're supposed to do when you've got a second-year quarterback that struggled as a rookie. I still believe in Zach Wilson's talent. I think the arm talent there is evident. There was some plays, obviously, last year that he'd love to have back, and that you look and go, that's poor even for a rookie quarterback. But then there's also some plays and some games that you look at and go, well, there's some talent there. I remember against the Bucs, he was pretty impressive. His touchdown pass last game of the season against the Bills was a hell of a throw. There's talent there. There's potential there. And I think the Jets have done right by in this offseason. They've gone and brought in some talent. This is a guy that had 40 passes dropped or over 40 passes dropped last year. There's only 4 quarterbacks in the league that had that many, had 40 or more. I think with the guys I just mentioned, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, coming in and hopefully some more protection from the line, we should see a slight improvement at least from Zach Wilson this year.
Speaking of the talent that they brought in, they drafted Breece Hall from Iowa State. Keith, you did a rookie profile on Breece Hall. What are your thoughts on Breece Hall and what he had done in college and what he potentially do in the pros for the Jets? Writers, Jonathan Klanowski, he wrote a piece on their preview here about Breece Hall. And he was saying, using Fantasy Pros ADP, he's behind Zeke, Akers, and Montgomery, going as the running back 23. I mean, this guy has RB1 potential, right?
It's more than RB1 potential. He is an RB1. I mean, what do you need? He's a good blocker. He's a good pass catcher. He's shown that he can handle a workload. He's explosive. He's physical. He can run after contact. I mean, I think it was Next Gen Stats, the running backs that he most compared to, with the exception of Travis Etienne, which again, he had the injury. I think he's still going to be really good, but it's guys like Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, who I know, he hasn't been as great the last couple of years, but his first year he was incredible. Jonathan Taylor, he's that kind of back, and I think that it was a brilliant pick for the Jets. I know a lot of people scoffed at it because they just got Michael Carter the year before. But I just think that's exactly what's going to help Zach Wilson. He's going to add another dimension to their offense. And the Jets are a team that if their offensive line can block, I think their offense is going to be really good. And if they're smart, they're going to give the ball to Breece Hall a lot, hopefully let Zach Wilson get a little bit more protection from defenses just having to concentrate on the run. And, those are 2 really talented receivers on the outside that can make big plays. And I think the Jets are going to surprise people on offense. Their defense is going to be bad, I think, again. But I really do think that their offense has a chance to be pretty legit this year. Maybe one of those surprise ones that we get every year.
TM42 over on YouTube saying Breece Hall is a top 10 running back. I think Keith and Jonathan Klanowski would agree. Another running back for the Jets. Let's not forget about Michael Carter, and let's not forget about where Michael Carter had success in North Carolina. It was running alongside Javonte Williams, where Javonte was taking the brunt of the punishment, and Michael Carter was able to get these wide open lanes or catching passes out of the backfield. Who's to say that that's not exactly what he needs in New York now with this Jets offense, with this Shanahan style of running scheme that they brought over, and LaFleur's younger brother. Just interesting backfield right here. Going to the wide receiver position, this is interesting because Tyler, you put out a poll yesterday talking about who is the wide receiver 1 for the Jets. Is it going to be Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, or is it going to be Garrett Wilson?
I put Corey Davis on there as a control experiment to see how many votes on Twitter you could throw out.
For the scientists out there, that was the negative control or isotype control. And who won that poll, by the way, just out of curiosity?
Elijah Moore destroyed it. He got almost 80% of the votes, which, ADP says that he's the wide receiver 1, but it's only by less than 3 spots. So
yeah. Okay. See, and Keith, I just heard you say as he should be.
Yeah.
Charlie, Why shouldn't he be?
Yeah, I mean, they used a top 10 draft pick on Garrett Wilson. You don't do that if you're not going to use that guy. I'm looking at a tweet right now from @Guru Fantasy World. It says every single wide receiver in the past 10 years to declare early from college and get drafted top 10 posted 185 plus receiving yards as a rookie. This is a Garrett Wilson tweet. They could have used that draft pick on any other position, defense, O-line, whatever. They used it on a wide receiver. And it's not to say that Elijah Moore and Corey Davis are bad players. They have dealt with injury last year, so they are probably looking for a reliable wide receiver one in that Jets offense. And I think the Wilson to Wilson connection might be starting in 2022.
Yeah, Guru Fantasy World, aka David Gutierrez, former Fantasy and Frames writer here. So just a little shout out to him and his brand. Keith, are you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, people are acting like Elijah Moore wasn't special last year. I mean, 75% win rate against man-to-man, 73% against press-man coverage. If you look at his numbers, weeks 7 through 13, they compare almost identical to the names Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin. He gets open, and it doesn't matter what route he's running. Chris Olave, we don't know what he's going to do. I mean, I'm sorry, I got the Ohio State guys mixed up there. But I just think that he's got an extra year. Rookies are hit or miss. I know people look at what Jefferson and, guys like Chase have done, but that is not the norm for rookie receivers. I definitely would take the guy that's already played one season in the league. Granted, it was only like 8-9 games, but I think that Elijah Moore showed last year that he can do everything. If you look at his win rate on routes, it's unbelievable. It really is. It's very rare for a guy to come in immediately and have a 75% win rate man-to-man. Typically, when they do that, they're going to have a very successful year. And even more importantly, they're going to have a breakout year in years 1 through 4, 2 through 4. Will it be this year? I can't, obviously guarantee that, but I like my chances with what he's shown in the time that he played last year.
Okay, let's get to the tight end position. And we, I referenced CJ Uzomah and the T-shirt. He had some great games with Joe Burrow, but this isn't Joe Burrow. This isn't the Bengals. I put it as far as a value in terms of tight end in the division, somebody to go after. And this is somebody that people are going to be kind of scratching their heads like, who, why, what are you doing over there? And that's Tyler Conklin. He had a great year for the Minnesota Vikings last year, filling in for Irv Smith, who was injured. Keith, you wrote about him. He had 500 yards receiving, career highs. What I really like about him, one is that he's available. They say the best availability is availability. Two, when you look at being one of the short-handed tight ends in the NFL, he was second only to George Kittle in the fewest dropped passes, especially in the red zone, where he was the tight end 9 last year in terms of red zone targets overall. So give me a short-handed guy who catches the ball in scoring position. Yes, please. And I think the most important thing here to take away is, hey, him and Zach Wilson are already building a rapport. So, unless Uzomah comes back and is, lights out, I would be very shocked if you don't see some decent production at the tight end position.
You can get him late too, which is to me the big thing.
Absolutely. Before we go on now to the Patriots and the Bills, let's throw in some fun here. And even though that was fun, Tyler, you got some trivia here for us here for the AFCs. What do you got for us?
Well, so we'll do some quick hitters here. Do you want me to do them all right now, or save some till the end?
You can do whatever you want. You can say I'm going to do the next 2 or 3, and then we'll go to the, go to the next team.
All right, so I got it split up into running backs and wide receivers. It's nothing crazy. It's just quick hitters who can say it first. So, where did these AFC East running backs go to college? How about Ramondre Stevenson?
If they're not Georgia, I'm probably not going to know it.
Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Hey,
Oklahoma. Mr. Espresso is coming with the fire.
damn Brits.
All right. Who, by the way, was running with the 1s today for those who are following Patriots training camp today.
Oh, wow.
And Damian Harris is running with the 2s, just putting that out there to confuse even more people.
Belichick's going to Belichick.
Belichick's going to Belichick. What else you got for us, Tyler?
All right. Well, you already said both Jets running backs colleges, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that.
I knew those.
All right. So these are a little bit harder. Devin Singletary.
Florida Atlantic.
I guess they're not that hard.
Also,
Oh, yeah.
advantage. So,
And Chase Edmonds. Go.
Arizona State.
Nope.
Nope, not Arizona.
Florida.
I think I'm going to get you guys on this one.
FIU.
Fordham.
Fordham.
Yep.
Is in like New York City, the Bronx, Fordham.
Yep. FU.
That's awesome.
Sure, those hats are popular.
All right.
For sure. You got one more for us, or do you want to go to the next team and then we'll come back to another trivia question?
I want to hit the wide receivers all in a row next.
Okay,
So we'll come back to it.
All right, let's go to the next team. Let's go. Speaking of Patriots running backs, let's go to New England. Mac Jones, Bill. It's interesting. Last year, I forget who it was. It could be me. Just putting it out there. I thought that maybe not from a fantasy perspective, but in terms of a team success perspective, out of all the quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen and the AFC East, it was Mac Jones who was surrounded by the most talent that could actually be somewhat successful. Not obviously for fantasy purposes, but obviously he led his team to the playoffs, or at least helped lead his team to the playoffs. Everyone's making note of the fact that he's coming into camp all shredded now, and that's about it. The receiving weapons for the Patriots, they got Devontae Parker from Miami, who's been kind of a shell of himself the past few seasons, but the potential is there. What do you make of Mac Jones here?
Not for me.
Okay,
Not for me.
there we go.
I mean, it might just be the Patriots bias. So we'll put that out there. It might be that. But for me, I'm looking at a quarterback that has, Devontae Parker, who can't separate at all. So he's just a jump ball guy. And apart from when he destroys the Bills once a year, he doesn't do anything or hasn't done anything. Who else has he got? He's got a couple of blocking wide receivers. Yeah, he's got Hunter Henry. That's it. In a team that's going to run the ball probably more than anybody else in the NFL next year. And we don't have that athletic upside that we do with, Josh Allen. Even Tua's better on his feet than a guy like Matt Jones. So for me, it's just it's a low ceiling, not necessarily high floor quarterback. Like, we know you're going to get a guy, you're going to get a QB2, but it doesn't excite me. I think we're going to get a regression from Matt Jones. I don't necessarily think it's going to be his fault. I don't mind the player. It's just, I don't like the situation, and I think Bill Belichick's going to run the ball until he can't run it anymore.
Nate, if I told you that former Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator Matt Patricia was going to be calling your plays on offense, what would you just think about the Patriots offense as a whole?
I would say probably typically it would be Damian Harris more than Ramondre Stevenson, but with him running with the ones, I would probably lean more towards a running game. But at the same time, a good running game typically helps aid a good passing game. And Mac does one thing well, is he's accurate. He had about a 68% completion percentage. So, but I agree. I'm not really outside of like Scott Fishbowl, where you have leagues that are geared towards real play, I would say, more so than fantasy, like the accuracy having such a key component. He's valuable in that format simply because there's so many that will lose points in the accuracy, I'd say penalties that if you want to call it that, but that's what it was. So yeah, I can't see enough and no, losing the second new offensive coordinator. Quarterbacks typically go from in their first 2 years with two different offensive coordinators. I don't have it in front of me, but my guess is it's not a high success rate for second year guys on their second offensive coordinator.
And he's gone from
not just rookies. It's tough when you change coordinators.
Exactly.
Hey guys, we know Bill Belichick's going to be calling plays, right?
Well, yeah, for the most part.
Is
okay.
he? Well, he's a decent guy.
I mean,
Oh, stop it. He is the best football
Not
mind on the
his
planet.
time.
He can
Have you
call
seen his son on the
offensive plays.
He
sideline?
was the best football mind on the planet.
Oh, jeez.
He's 70 years old. I mean, eventually, just like with anything else, you get old. He's showing signs between some of the, just decisions he's making around the front office. And just he got out coached in several games last year, too. I'm not saying that he's not still a great coach, but it's not Bill Belichick from 10 years ago. And to the point about Mac Jones, Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, was not asked to do a lot in this offense for the same team under the same head coach, 20 years ago. Mac Jones is not going to be flinging it. So for fantasy purposes, he would be the least desirable quarterback in this division and one of the least desirable ones in the league. And that's not against Mac Jones. It's just for what we're doing, fantasy purposes. He's not going to be slinging it. That's for sure.
All right, more passing yards. Kyler Murray, Mac Jones.
Stop it.
Last year.
I mean, it feels like you're leading us to Mac Jones here.
I would be, and that's correct.
How many games did Kyler Murray miss?
Yeah, kind of missed time.
2, 3.
Okay, so that kind of makes up for,
I understand, but I always gear trivia questions whenever I see something that stands out. Jorge, Ryan Tannehill or Mac Jones?
Well, I'd hope Mac Jones. He really does stink.
Tannehill because Henry wasn't there.
It is not Tannehill. It is Mac Jones as well. Yeah. Mac Jones was 13th in the NFL last year.
Did Matt Ryan pass him with no wide receivers?
Yes, he did.
There you go.
Yep.
And
then again, so did Jimmy Garoppolo. So
okay.
We touched on running backs, or did we? Are we all going for Ramondre Stevenson and for value, or do you think the news today kind of just completely destroyed whatever value Ramondre Stevenson?
They won't go away from Damian Harris altogether, right?
No.
I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I know in New England, who knows? But
well,
he was really good last year.
He was.
He's been really good both years.
Yeah. We'll stay tuned for that position and talk about it a little bit more.
And doesn't Stevenson have a fumbling problem, which we know with Belichick? If you fumble, you're dead to Belichick. So if he fumbles in like the first or second game, I mean, again, it could be right back to Harris' job. I always am leery of a New England running back who has fumbling issues.
Very good point. Bill, you talked about the wide receivers there for the Patriots and just how quote unquote garbage. I'm paraphrasing what you said they are. Charlie, why don't you tell everybody about a wide receiver that people for the Patriots might want to learn a little bit more about?
Yeah, that wide receiver room is really just a big mess. But if there's one guy that I would keep your eye on is Kendrick Bourne. His ADP
Bourne identity.
Exactly. His ADP is absolutely disgusting. It's 203.7, which is essentially what the last round of majority of drafts. But I'll talk about him more in terms of statistics. Compared to other wide receivers with at least 67 targets, which is what he had last year, he ranks like top 10, top 15 in almost every statistic. And, I'll get more specific later on in the show, but Jacoby Myers had 121 targets last year, 866 yards for 2 touchdowns. Kendrick Bourne had just over half those targets, 67 targets, but produced just as well, 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. So if he's able to produce just as well as the wide receiver 1, quote unquote, with half the wide receivers 1 targets, I think this guy's an absolute steal. Why not throw a late round flyer on this guy if he has the chance to be the wide receiver 1 for his team, even if Mac Jones doesn't sling the ball like we want him to.
Good call. Rounding us out here at the tight end position. Keith, should we just write off Jonnu and just make this a Hunter Henry conversation topic right here?
Yes. He was used almost predominantly as the run blocking tight end. Henry was used almost predominantly as the pass catching tight end. Obviously, there has, concerns with Henry's injury history. I think last year was the first time in his career that he played every game during the season. And I do think he's going to have touchdown regression because he scored the most touchdowns he had since his rookie year, which was like 2016. But again, just like with all the tight ends, I don't love them at any of the locations unless you're getting them below their ADP, because it could go really well or it could go really bad, and I wouldn't be shocked either way. But Henry was incredible with Jones, and he definitely has a connection in the red zone, and had a very high catch per target rate. So, I mean, I could see him having a good season, but the touchdowns is what scared me. When you go from, I think he had 4, 5, and 6 the 3 years before, and you jump to 9, I don't know if he can repeat that this year.
All right, let's wrap up here on offense. We'll get to IDP in a second with the Buffalo Bills. Bill, I'm just going to go rapid fire. I'm going to name you some players, and you're just going to be like thumbs up, thumbs down, or maybe a short blurb about what you think. Hey, is this Josh Allen guy any good? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Heads or tails?
He's the best quarterback in football. Come on.
He's not the best quarterback in football.
Oh, behave.
You got to win a title.
No,
say that.
Wins are not a quarterback stat.
Oh, they're not?
Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't care what you say.
He would have won the game against Mahomes last year. I'm pretty sure if he'd have been the best quarterback in football.
I don't care what you say. Wins aren't a quarterback stat. Josh Allen's better. I'd take him over any other quarterback. End of discussion.
You're a Bills fan. I hope you would.
End of discussion. I don't need to argue.
I have him ranked second. Joe and Charlie, you have him ranked as your number 1.
I have him number 1 for fantasy, but not best in football.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I have ranked number 1 for both, just so we're
I know.
aware
I knew you
I'm
did. That's what I was
didn't
clarifying.
see that one coming at all. All right, we saw Devin Singletary going to the running back position kind of emerge towards the end of the season last season, but then they went ahead and drafted James Cook.
Yes.
Georgia Bulldog. I know, Keith, you like your Georgia Bulldogs. Let's go.
I especially like this one, though.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get both Bill and Keith your thoughts. Who would you rather have? Bill, we'll start with you first. James Cook or Devin Singletary on your roster for redraft?
Redraft Singletary, Dynasty obviously Cook.
Really? Why Singletary for redraft purposes?
I think Singletary is going to be the lead back. I think James Cook's going to play that pass catching third down role. Might change later in the season, but Devin Singletary finished last year as RB1. I think the last few games of the season. He was impressive. He scored touchdowns. I don't think they want to. They don't want to use Josh Allen as a battering ram, especially early in the season. Obviously, it doesn't matter once we get into the playoffs. But I think Devin Singletary for this year is a sneaky picker. I think he could produce RB2 kind of numbers.
All right, let's go to the wide receiver position here. Obviously, we know Stephon Diggs is pretty good. Go Terps. Gabe Davis. Is he even a value anymore, Charlie? Or does he still possess some semblance of that?
I assume Bill's going to disagree with me, but the hype around him is just scaring me, man. His ADP is rising by the second. I don't know.
What's his current ADP, Charlie?
We have it here as 83.6.
I pulled that this morning.
I'm talking about like his wide receiver.
30
range.
36. Wide receiver 36.
I still think that there is room to improve his 36. Guy could be a touchdown machine.
I think I've seen him being taken as wide receiver 21, but that's probably Dynasty.
Now that's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. That's ahead of a lot of wide receiver ones, like solidified wide receiver ones on teams. So I'm just going to stay away. I'm not going to buy into the hype because if he fails, that's going to be catastrophic for fantasy Twitter. I don't know. It's not appealing to me.
It's crazy. We were using Sleeper as our ADP here, but I'm looking at the other platforms. Yahoo, he's the wide receiver 28. Fantrax 28. FFC 34. Come on, people. But
can I just play devil's advocate that if Allen has the year that we expect, and this guy is without a doubt I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Billy, but the last 2 years, I believe he had more red zone targets than every receiver but Stephon Diggs on the team, and he wasn't even playing a significant amount of snaps. So if this offense is that good and he's such a red zone monster target, we saw it obviously in the Kansas City playoff game last year, there is a chance that he could explode.
Yeah. I don't see what people are scared of. I really don't. He's the wide receiver 2. He's the clear wide receiver 2 in one of the top passing offenses in football. Top 3. Let's say Bucks are up there and the Chiefs are up there, obviously. Stephon Diggs is still Stephon Diggs. He's still going to take the majority of the attention away. Jamison Crowder is an upgrade over Cole Beasley, and that doesn't mean that he's going to get the ball a ton. It just means that defenses have got to be more aware that if the guy in the slot catches the ball, he's going to do more damage than the 48-year-old Cole Beasley did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Davis is a stud. He's a stud. The reason that he gets so many targets in the red zone is because he's the best blocking wide receiver by a country mile on the team. So when they want to sell the run, Gabe Davis has to be on the field. And then when it turns into a pass play, you've got him out there, which is why him and Dawson Knox catch so many touchdown passes. The guy is a stud. He's a stud. For dynasty purposes, stud. Right. But for redraft, I still see him as a wide receiver too. I think he's going to finish as a top 24 wide receiver.
Can I ask him one other thing real quick, Jorge?
Yeah, go for it.
Isaiah McKenzie is somebody that I was really high on this year because to me, he's more of the Beasley prototype that they typically use in slot, but he's a lot more athletic and dangerous after catching the ball in open space. But he's been dropping. I mean, is that something that's coming out that he's not going to play? Or
Isaiah McKenzie is a good football player. He's not a good fantasy football player.
Yeah, what Ty said.
Okay.
But he does like to drop the ball a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
He did that at Georgia, so that doesn't surprise me.
Nate, we all know Jamison Crowder, especially I know health has always been a concern with him. He was in New York. He was in Washington. He had a few good years here and there, but for the most part, he was injured. He now goes and takes over Cole Beasley's role. Are you even throwing a late round dart at this guy just because of the offense he's on, or just nope, just leave him on the waiver wire?
And a lot of that stems. I mean, granted, it's hour one of training camp, and they're already saying Isaiah McKenzie is working with the ones and Crowder. Don't get me wrong. By the end of camp, there will be a report, mark my words, that says Josh Allen showing increased trust with Jamison Crowder. And as soon as that happens, every best ball last round pick will be Jamison Crowder. And they'll be waiting for week 3, whatever week it is. He'll have, 9 targets, 7 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. And yes, those numbers, as low as that yardage will be, but that will probably happen. And I think that everything that Billy said about, Gabe Davis is true. The only thing, and I'm so glad you brought it up and mentioned the way you did. It's one of the reasons I love these little conversations we have is because when I look at a red zone touchdown rate of 66%, or at least an inside the 10 touchdown rate of 66%, it's a super unsustainable, unsticky number. But not if you're let out there to block with Josh Allen, who's 100% key focus number 1, that he has to be. I would love to go back and look at all the touchdowns he had within the 10 of the 9 targets and the 6 touchdowns. How many of those he had? The average separation was, 2 yards within the 10. I think it's probably a pretty high number. And I think that's maybe a little more sticky than anything. And despite my, it won't be hatred because we still won the game. But after last year's game against the Chiefs, I really
that
didn't
would be hater if you're hating on the game that you won. You
can still hate somebody. I mean, but I don't. I have respect for the Bills. I do.
It's like picking on the Falcons, man. They're the Bills. They haven't won anything. Like it's like, hey, I'm with you, pro. Like I am. I'm a Falcons fan. I know how it feels. But it's like, why are you picking on us?
If it makes you feel any better, Nate, I wanted to buy Davis's jersey after that game, but he wears 13 and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, fair.
I'm lucky.
That's fair. Well,
I'll
send you a Chiefs jersey of. You can have Tyreek Hill if you want. I throw that.
Well, with your breaking news earlier in the show, I don't know.
Exactly.
Let's finish with Dawson Knox. Keith, you wrote a great piece about Dawson Knox. Look, the touchdowns. I think, Bill, you agree with that he's really a product of the touchdown department there. He's in a great offense. For what you're getting at tight end, if you're not getting one of these top 3 tight ends or top 4 tight ends, then he's definitely somebody that you want to kind of target in the next echelon of tight end with the Dalton Schultzes and the Gesicki's. If you had to rate Knox, Gesicki, Schultz, how would you rank them?
Me?
Yes.
Schultz, Knox, Gesicki.
Cool. All right. And we won't even spend time on OJ Howard. Let's get into some IDP. So Nate, you and I, we did our IDP here for the AFC East. We looked at linebackers, defensive linemen / edge rushers, and defensive backs. And so for some of you out there who are looking at the rankings that we have here, certain players we're close on, like CJ Mosley. I have him as my linebacker 11. You have him as your 16. We have some where I have Jerome Baker at 26. You have him at 17. Okay, that's a bit of a gap. Jawan Bentley, I have at 37. You have at 77.
Mhm.
So there's obviously some discrepancies, or I shouldn't say discrepancies, but there's obviously some differences of opinion here. And I think people who are reading this and watching this, and for those who have been listening to Shoot the Gap, our IDP podcast here, hosted by Nate Markham, we cover two different fantasy point scoring systems. We have our Fantasy and Frames, or FIF IDP scoring settings that we are utilizing in the 4-Head Championship. The people over at 5 Yard Fantasy in the UK, for all their IDP content, they're using FIF IDP scoring. Nate, you are top 4. Nate, you are the guy who we have the banner for, the medal on our Fantasy and Frames homepage.
Donovan
Finishing the top
McNabb.
4 in Fantasy Pros IDP ranking.
I'll send you a belt from WWE, Nate, soon, so you can just put it in the background.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll get you a trophy smack belt or something. But anyhow, so you were top 4. I mean, I want to say that some of your rankings, if not your rankings, are more based off of that scoring. Would that be accurate or not when we're looking at our side-by-side comparison of rankings?
So here's the trouble I run into with that, and this can go out to the rest of the other 5 of you. If you're in a competition that gears a specific scoring rubric that you can help facilitate growth and traffic to your particular site by finishing top 4, number 1, you set the rankings in a way that is beneficial to you winning that competition. If we rank all of our players based off of FIF scoring, we will not win. We will be 25th and 30th, and I don't care that much about it, but I do because it's nice to see on the Fantasy and Frames website to put something that maybe doesn't depict exactly how the rankings are, but it shows the amount of hard work that we all put in. And so that is one of the issues with the Fantasy Pro scoring is I like to play, fantasy sports, like to play real sports, like to play games, board games, etc. And I'd like to win. And if that means finding the angle, my daughter, she plays Clue against us, and I hate that game because she cheats. She doesn't cheat. She watches what everybody writes down, and she keeps a mental note. You're not breaking rules. You're just gaining the advantage. I want to gain the edge. I want to have, i.e., like Jawan Bentley, a person, which Jawan Bentley is not the best of examples. A better example, someone like Matthew Judon, who in regular Fantasy Pro scoring as a linebacker, he should be like an LB, probably 65. But in Fantasy and Frame scoring, he's probably, top 25 because of the quarterback hits. And the pressures will lead to that. And so, yeah.
So you're talking about the point scoring is
different
compared to standard to what you're trying, and that's sometimes where
they are different. It's also position eligibility too. You can take advantage of a linebacker that has defensive line and put the linebacker in a defensive line scoring, and of course he's going to score more. So
in these best balls that we've been doing, I know I'd asked Jorge this. You do want to look for guys that can play multiple positions because then you don't have to fill as many roster spots with defensive players, right?
Yeah, it also gives a wider range of outcomes in that one specific week where you have, 4 linebackers that all put up 25-point weeks.
Hopefully
one of them will be on your bench. In this case, they would slide. Probably all of them would slide into your defensive line spots, and then your next linebackers would then fill that gap. It's all about like lost or opportunity cost or sunk cost or whatever when it comes to the best ball things. But yeah, so Jorge, as far as Jawan Bentley goes, my concern with Bentley is the fact that why would you trade Chase Winovich and bring in Mac Wilson if you don't think there's going to be some type of rotation there? Personally, that's my only concern is I think the snap share, and last year we saw that he only played 691 snaps and he had 109 tackles for almost a 16% tackle rate. Wow. I don't think Jawan Bentley's that good of a linebacker to keep a 16% efficiency. And if you start dipping into snaps and he sees 691 as like kind of a ceiling play and it goes down, he falls down too far for someone that doesn't sack, doesn't blitz a ton. And I don't like that. I like the defensive line a little bit. Godshaw they signed today, and he leaves some openings for Bentley. But, we're pretty far off. And maybe I'll adjust mine a little bit. We'll see.
No, I wasn't saying so much I'm pro Jawan Bentley, as I am bringing to people's attention.
The reason for the disparity.
I'm looking at FIF scoring, and you're looking at Fantasy Pro scoring. Is where I was going with that.
That's fair. That's true.
So let's talk about linebackers. If you name one linebacker in the AFC East for people who are new to IDP, who are you going after for your IDP linebacker spot?
Oh, it's going to be CJ Mosley. I mean, he's the only one in the AFC East that I would even remotely think to anchor a team somewhat. I mean, he's 30, hoping for repeat last year. I mean, he's shown a little bit of health as of late, which is interesting. And I don't want to forecast health, but he's been, I mean, 100 tackles is a floor. And if you look at last year, 168, I think that's probably maybe an outlier. Obviously, we have the extra game, but you even fall somewhere in the middle there. Give me that baseline, low end LB1 that is probably drafted as an LB2.
You know, it's interesting. For my value at linebacker, I've picked also a fellow Jets linebacker in Quincy Williams. Like, he had a couple of years where he only played like 2 or 7 games, and then he played 16 last year, and he blew up being the 1B to CJ Mosley's 1A. This is where, you know, playing the game behind the game or the game within the game comes into play.
Yes,
we like to look at sleeper ADP and ESPN ADP. And for sleeper ADP, he is the linebacker 36, which just out of, you know, he's outside of the LB2 range that you're looking for when you're looking at linebackers to start your LB1, LB2. But he has defensive back eligibility, which is BS because he played like 4 snaps at defensive back, and then which he's automatically considered a defensive back. So if you have a defensive back spot and CJ Mosley, or not CJ Mosley, but Quincy Williams is available, you draft Quincy Williams and you put that linebacker in a defensive back spot, and you just gave yourself a huge competitive advantage. Something to keep in mind there. Let's go to, and for those who want to read more about the IDP situation in the AFC East, again, head over to fantasyframes.com and read about that at the Fantasy Football Divisional Preview. And of course, we'll be talking about that leading up to the fantasy football season over on Shoot the Cat, our IDP dedicated podcast. Continuing on with a defensive back. If you had to pick one defensive back, Nate, AFC East, who's the guy?
I mean, it's Jordan Poyer. As consistent, stable as they come. I mean, he's just exactly what you would want for consistency, and it's 5 straight for him now with 90 plus tackles, 2 plus interceptions, 4 plus tackles for a loss. He's had at least a sack in each one of those seasons. I mean, last year was technically a down year, but he had 5 interceptions and 3 sacks. So they're using him in different areas now in terms of getting the most out of his game. And as he gets older, well, you know, but the thing is he's still young. And so I think that where he finished last year, which was DB5, is pretty consistent with the floor of safely in the middle of that DB1 overall.
All right, let's round us out with defensive linemen / edge rushers. Who would you pick here out of the AFC East?
This is the toughest one because, you know, we know Matthew Judon in our scoring rubric in fantasy and frame scoring is probably the best option simply because value, where he's been going versus what he can actually produce. I mean, if you look at his time with Baltimore, he had 54 quarterback hits from between 19 and 20. He hadn't topped, double-digit sacks prior, but last year he had 12 and a half, 25 hits on top of that. He's a beast, and it's easy to follow in fantasy, or at least in real life, because he wears those long red sleeves, so you always know where he's at on the field.
Nice. All right, let's finish up with just one more wide receiver trivia question. Tyler, which one are you going to try and stump us with? Make it a good one.
All right. Well, we can do some quick ones because they're very easy, but I'll let you decide.
Don't
so
jinx
this is who threw these wide receivers' first touchdown pass in their career, AFC East edition.
Okay.
So we're going to start with Stephon Diggs.
In the AFC, his first pass was from Teddy Bridgewater.
His first touchdown pass in his career, yes, it was from Teddy Bridgewater. You are correct.
Thank you.
All right. So this one, I know who will get it. Tyreek Hill, who threw his first touchdown pass.
Alex Smith.
You got it. Let's do Corey Davis, who threw his first touchdown pass.
Mariota.
That's
Ooh,
right.
Good call.
And last one, Devontae Parker. Tannehill. Got it.
Nice.
We finished strong, folks. That's a fantastic. Okay.
Exactly.
Great questions. All right. Thank you, everybody who are listening and watching. That was our AFC East Primer. For more information, head over to fantasyandframes.com and read our fantasy football preview of the AFC East, as well as on the different social media platforms that we have here at Fantasy and Frames. You will see breakdowns of that information there as well. I want to thank Bill Mustafa for now staying with us at 2 a.m. Great Britain time. Thank you very much for being with us. Charlie, welcome to Fourth and Frames. We hope to have you back here more often during the season. Tyler, as always, great meeting up with you and having you on the pod. Keith, welcome to Fourth and Frames. Also, want to have you on as much as possible. Nate Markham, we'll see you tomorrow night, buddy. We have a very special show tomorrow night on Shoot the Gap, a special time at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have John Macri from Pro Football Focus here to talk about the NFC position battles here for IDP purposes. So we're looking forward to that. So we got the entire IDP crew with us. So thank you all very much for watching. Again, rate, review, subscribe over on iTunes or wherever it is you listen to podcasts. And we will catch you next week where we're talking the NFC East. Y'all have a good one.
The Rock has 2 words of advice for you. Simply put, get ready.